Welcome to Almost Pro Bites, where we take a quick bite at the biggest conversations in sport. Today's conversation is one that might divide people a little. We're talking today about confidence versus arrogance in sport, because confidence is essential, right? If you want to compete at an elite level. But sometimes what starts as confidence is slowly coupled with ego, entitlement, superiority, and suddenly we have an issue of arrogance. So today we're asking, does elite sport accidentally reward arrogance?
Yeah, because if you really think about it, elite athletes often spend years in environments where they're constantly being praised, prioritized, protected, and
Mm,
accommodated because of
mhm.
their skill, their talent. Entire systems end up built around their schedule, their performance, their recovery, their success. And after a while, that probably changes your whole sense of normal human interaction, whether people realize it or not.
100%. Absolutely. But remembering when you're at the elite level, you're spending like 10, 15 years, I suppose, in your system, in your institution, in your frameworks, in your sport. And that's 10 to 15 or so years of people adjusting around you constantly. There comes a point where that feels normal, right? Where that begins to be your normal. So I think that's where this conversation gets interesting, because sometimes athletes aren't intentional about that superiority. It's just they've spent so long in an environment where it's been fostered, where it's been harnessed, where they've been the center of everything.
Yeah, and to be fair, a lot of that exists for performance reasons.
Sure.
Like athletes are doing extraordinary things.
Agree.
The pressure is also enormous, the
Mhm.
scrutiny is enormous, and
Mhm.
more often than not, the sacrifice is also enormous.
Mhm.
So confidence at that level does make complete sense.
Get it. I agree. I agree. And I don't think it's about downplaying that. I think we recognize you need confidence to be able to perform in these types of environments. It doesn't mean though they also never experience things like doubt or imposter syndrome, because you and I both know plenty of athletes do, and we've had our own experiences, but we know lots of people who have had deep experiences with doubt and imposter syndrome. So you still need enough belief in yourself to perform under that enormous pressure that you talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. And research around elite performance that supports that too. You know, high performing athletes often do show strong self-belief, high self-efficiency, and a lot of competitive confidence. Because doubt at the highest level, we all know that can cost you. That can genuinely affect your overall performance.
Yeah, yeah, and you see it, right? You and I reckon we could pretty quickly lean into examples of where you can see someone, and we call it they've lost their head. Where they've gone into the doubt zone. But the bit I think where sport probably struggles with this concept of confidence versus arrogance is when confidence stops being, I believe in myself, so I believe in me, and becomes more, I'm more important than other people, because they're very different things.
Very different things, absolutely. And honestly, I think fans are really conflicted on this one too, because sport also loves personalities. You know, it's the the swagger sells, the confidence sells, the big personalities sell, and I'm sure we can all think of an example or two, right? Like
Quickly,
some of the
very quickly.
biggest athletes in history have built entire brands around this psychological dominance and ego.
And we've talked about a few of these in different episodes with very different essential substance or subjects. But it really is this notion of sport as entertainment, right? And that arrogance can become entertaining. We tune in for it. But you either love the athlete or you love to see them lose. You love to get to be the person that's championing whoever their opposition is. Either way, it sells, it's entertaining, and people watch.
Yeah, and it can be big business. But then the counterpoint I think is really important too, because some of the most respected athletes of all time have been known for being incredibly grounded. You
Yeah.
know, some of the examples that come to mind is like Roger Federer in tennis or Steph Curry in basketball in the NBA, even Ash Barty in tennis out of Australia. And I have to also mention Nadal. And I know I've just done 3 tennis with 1 basketball, but I am who I am. Look,
Won't change me. You won't change me.
Lionel Messi in football. You know, there's and some of these players, they're just the goats, you know what I mean? Like, they're great inspirations,
And fun.
and examples. Yeah, and people who have just achieved unbelievable things without making everyone around them feel small, and that's the key.
You do see it in tennis though, those little moments with the ball kids, you know, you see
Yeah,
those through into, exchanges, and I think you start to get a sense of the person that is not all stage and performance. I really love that. I think what separates I think that is the separation, you know, of confidence from arrogance. I think confident people can make other people feel comfortable. The arrogance is where people start to make the people around them feel lesser than them.
absolutely. That is such a good way to put it because truly confident people usually don't need to constantly establish status. They don't walk into every room trying to remind people who they are.
So true. So true. You already know, don't you? I think the issue perhaps with this is that the youth are watching. Our next generation of athletes are watching and they're absorbing it. They're seeing how does someone who they deem to be a successful athlete behave? How are they carrying themselves? How are they allowed to act? Like what do we promote as acceptable behavior? And also whether success gives you permission to treat people differently.
Yeah, I think maybe the difficult reality is elite sport can accidentally reward ego because if we think about it, what's getting rewarded? Winning gets rewarded, attention's getting rewarded, confidence gets rewarded, and dominance gets rewarded. And sometimes humility becomes quieter and much less visible.
Especially to young kids. Especially to young kids. I think humility is a concept we understand better as we're a little bit older. We can appreciate it. And maybe they've got a sense of it, but I think we appreciate it more. When you're a kid, you're looking at dominance and it is rewarded in sport, right? What's really interesting is that some athletes use success to make their environments better where they can make people feel valued. They can fight for systems, they can fight for rights, they can be more relaxed, more inclusive, and just generally more respected. Whereas others use it to establish status or where they are in a hierarchy. And I think that's two models of leadership. And it meant, you know, this isn't the podcast to say one is right and one is wrong. It's just to say there's two very different approaches here.
Yeah, and honestly, some of the best people in sport aren't remembered only because they won,
Mm,
which is why I think it's so important to establish what kind of leader do you want to be and maybe take a little bit of note of what kind of athlete, what kind of leader are you supporting, are you surrounding yourself by? Because often athletes are remembered because of how they treated people while they were winning.
yeah, yeah, that's so true. So perhaps the reality is that confidence in and of itself isn't the problem. You know, we can all agree that elite athletes have to have confidence. The real question is potentially, can confidence exist without a sense of superiority behind it? We want confident athletes, sport needs confident athletes, but it probably also demands elements of humility and self-awareness and respect, right? And to some extent, we love the showmanship. So, did we solve this? Maybe we didn't. But that is it for this episode of Almost Pro Bites. Do you think elite sport accidentally rewards ego? Or do fans actually want athletes with swagger and arrogance? We'd love to hear your thoughts. See you next time.
See you then.